Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of the Top of Off podcast. And we are going to be looking today at day 3 of the third test between England and the West Indies, which is obviously being held in Old Trafford. This is a deciding test in the series, so it's really important, and it's a really big game for both teams. So yes, without further ado, we shall get into an overview of the day and then talk about what we want to talk about, basically. In terms of how the day went for both teams, England ended the day in a very comfortable position and in a very dominant position to end the day. So the West Indies started the day on 137 for 6, following on for their overnight total, and Jason Holder and Shane Barrett managed to move the West Indies past their overnight, past that total of 137 for 6 to 170. Which was the follow-on point. And had the West Indies been all out before that, they would, England could have enforced the follow-on. So they moved past the follow-on point. Although one significant moment in that period of play was that Jason Holder was caught by Ollie Pope off Chris Woakes' bowling, but it was a no ball from Chris Woakes, so the wicket did not fall. But even then, even though the West Indies managed to avoid the follow-on, the batting performance still left a lot to be desired, as England's pace attack, especially, and Stuart Broad in particular, really tore into the West Indies middle order and their tail um, and West Indies. Jermaine Blackwood fell for 26. Jason Holder fell for 46, and he was the highest scorer in the West Indies' first innings. Raheem Cornwall fell for 10. Shane Dowrich fell for 37. And Kemar Roach and Shannon Gabriel both contributed 0 to batting innings. So they ended on 197 not out, following some spectacular bowling, especially, as I said, from Stuart Broad, who took figures of 6 for 31. And he was his best performance in a home test since his remarkable 8 for 15 against Australia 5 years ago. So really brilliant work from Stuart Broad there. And then Jimmy Anderson took 2 wickets, and Jofra Archer and Griff Rose both took 1 each as well. So it was all-round performance from the team, and especially the pace attack. England then opted to bat just before lunch, and Rory Burns and Dom Sibley, being the slow scorers that they are and being the very patient test batsmen that they are, built up slowly and shared an opening stand of 114. And this was the first England century stand since 2016. So remarkable stuff. First opening century stand since 2016. So quite remarkable stuff. And then Sibley fell on 56, and Rory Burns fell very close to his 190. So he could have had another test century, but it wasn't quite there. However, there were some concerns in that first period of play with Burns and Sibley that England's scoring rate was too low. And many questions were being asked over whether Jos Buttler and Ben Stokes should have opened the innings and just cracked out the runs that were needed, and then put the West Indies back into bat before the end of the day to capitalise on conditions and to make up for the overs that will probably be lost today due to rain. However, Joe Root then sent himself out and made a 58, and really pushed on the scoring. So Burns had a strike rate of 55, Sibley had a strike rate of 42, and then you contrast that with Joe Root's strike rate, which is 121. So really, the scoring was really pushed on very quickly, and England declared 226 for 2, setting the West Indies an almost impossible 399 runs to win. Then the West Indies were then put in just before the end of the day to bat again, and the decision to put them in was vindicated, as Stuart Broad again took 2 wickets, the wickets of John Campbell and Kemar Roach, for 0 and 4 respectively, which left the West Indies floundering on 10 for 2 overnight, and they will resume on 10 for 2 today. And given that rain is forecast at Old Trafford until 5 p.m. today, England basically have the whole of day 5 and a few overs, maybe the end of today, to take the 8 West Indies wickets that they need for victory. So it's looking very, very promising for England.
Yeah, it was a very good day for England. I have a stat of the day for something you mentioned earlier about the being caught off the no ball.
Yeah.
That was, first of all, that was Chris Woakes' second no ball, called no ball, by the way, in his entire Test career. He may have bowled others which weren't called, but in terms of called no balls, that was his second in his entire Test career. And just to compare him with some well-known bowlers' averages, to look at another bowler in this Test series, Shannon Gabriel, in terms of called no balls, he averages bowling a no ball every one in every 42 deliveries, I believe.
Yeah.
The great Bob Willis and the late great Bob Willis averaged bowling a no ball every one in 18 deliveries. And Chris Woakes averages bowling a no ball every one in, I believe, 3,022 deliveries. So Chris Woakes has been remarkably consistent on this front, and it just so happens that
was the unlucky one.
The second time ever he bowls a no ball, it gets a wicket. So that was upsetting for him, I'm sure. But overall, fantastic day for England. I didn't like the questions about Sibley and Burns. I think they did fine. We got what we wanted, which was 5 or 6 overs with the new ball at West Indies late in the day. That's exactly what they wanted.
Yeah.
Burns, I have no doubt, if he wasn't having to rush, would have got his century. He got out top edging a sweep, which he doesn't really do when he's being patient. So and Root played fantastically. It was really nice to see Joe Root do that.
Definitely.
He looked of late a bit like, we know he's a very not quite in the sort of Joss Butler, Johnny Bairstow vein of free-flowing batsman, but he likes to be busy. He likes to push things along and run hard. And he's looked a bit caught on the crease recently. He's buying into the whole the new team thing of we need to play slowly and patiently, and he just looks a lot better when he gets his feet moving and when he's busy, especially against the spin, when they bring on spin and he's sweeping and just trying things out. He looked really, really good. A couple of fantastic shots over the top as well. So I think that was nice for Root.
Yeah, and it's fair to say, I mean, he made his half century, but it's fair to say that had England, was today not looking like it's going to be mostly washed out, and had they not had to declare very soon, he could have gone on to make it a century as well.
Yeah, although obviously if today wasn't going to be washed out, he would have played quite differently as well. He would have played a lot slower, no, it was a very good piece of batting, particularly from Burns and Root together. They looked really good. Root hurried Burns along a bit.
Yeah.
Burns brought out a sweep against the spin, which is really a good thing to add to his arsenal. He's looked a bit like Sibley. He's looked a bit bogged down by spin at times and just pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back, while Sibley just pushes it into the leg side every time. And I think just that, they were talking about it on the Sky coverage, that just that addition of that sweep shot, which they both have, can be really useful in that. If you look at Alistair Cook, one of the greatest players of spin in English history, he had about 2 shots against spin. He just tucked it off his hip like Dom Sibley does. Yeah. And then when they set a field for that, he swept it hard to sort of third man kind of area. And it just moves the field and creates gaps elsewhere. Burns apparently has been working a lot with Graham Thorpe, England's batting coach, about how to play spin. Graham Thorpe, of course, a fantastic player of spin. And you saw yesterday him trying to put that in practice. He was using his feet a lot. He had a couple of nice shots off that. He swept and he looked really kind of busy and good.
Yeah. The thing to say about Rory Burns is that he's a very fast learner, and he does apply himself to actually solve any issues in his technique that come up. So I mean, we've seen that before when he struggled against short ball. Last summer he put the time in and the effort in to sort that out as well. So he does. Yeah, he can do. He can change his technique, and he can work on things and add things if needed, which is a really good sign, especially for a young batsman. Another stat is that Stuart Broad has reached 499 Test wickets with his second wicket of the West Indies innings last night. If he takes one more, which I mean is looking likely that he will, if he takes one more, he will be only the fourth pace bowler to reach 500 Test wickets. So obviously, I mean, shows how amazing he's been over his career, and how people that write him off do so at their peril. But also, he will probably reach 500 Test wickets in this Test match. He took 6 wickets in the West Indies' first innings. He made a 50, and it's the fastest 50 for England ever in England's first innings. So has this game been Stuart Broad Show?
Yeah. I think it has. He's played fantastically. His batting, of course, very good, but what he's known for is his bowling, and good God, he was on fire. It was amazing. Watching last night, the 2 wicket balls. First of all, he's now extended his run to, in 5 of his last 6 innings at Old Trafford, he's taken a wicket in his first over. And you can't bowl a better ball than that.
Yeah.
You just can't. It was amazing. It was, I'm not going to run on about it because I can babble on about it for ages, but just the seam position, the swing in, the movement away. It was perfect wicket ball. Yeah. It's that magic ball which everyone searches for, and he's clearly, as we know, immensely talented, immensely skilled, immensely experienced, and he knows exactly what he's doing, and he really deserves 500 wickets. I think it's sad that there aren't people in the ground to see it, because if you remember when Jimmy got his, it was
brilliant against India.
Yeah, so it was, it's sad for Broad, but he's made an immense achievement. What we have to remember is that, first of all, we were kind of starting to write him off a little bit, say, he won't be around forever. He's 3 years younger than Jimmy. Jimmy got his 500 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And now is, I think, 10 away from 600.
Yeah.
So Broad still has, or if we think he'll follow a similar career path at all, which he doesn't look like he's tiring out.
Yeah.
Broad really still has it. He's looking great, and we wish him every success. I think some of our stuff we talked about in the very first episode of this pod still kind of stands. He's not going to be around forever. We shouldn't get too reliant on him. We have to occasionally make that decision to leave him or game to get new talent in. But
there will be games where that will happen. But
I think what Stuart Broad's done here is he's really made a statement, and that statement is, I'm not the expendable one. Don't leave me out your side. It shouldn't be an easy decision to leave me or Jimmy Anderson out. And
he's proven.
Actually, Jimmy, he's bowling very well, as we know he can. But he's not taking anywhere near as many wickets as Broad. So
exactly.
I think I'm not saying that Jimmy can't take wickets or that he needs to be left out. But I think Broad has definitely made a big statement about he definitely doesn't see himself as kind of the second one in the partnership, and he feels he's on an even keel, and
definitely
shouldn't be the one who's automatically left out.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was just while you were talking, I just got onto Crick Info and the stats, and I've got the name of the 3 pace bowlers who have taken 5 wickets. So the club that and obviously Jimmy is first, and then you got Glenn McGrath and Courtney Walsh. So he's in the company of those three players. You know, he is England's one of England's, and not just England's, but is he one of Test cricket's most underrated players?
I think he is in the sense that it's not that he's underrated because people don't think he's as good as he is. People know how good he is. It's just because he is playing alongside.
Yeah.
Any other time, he'd be the best bowler in that team. In any team, he'd be an all-time great, and he is. But because he's playing alongside the greatest pace bowler ever to have walked the earth in terms of Test wickets, it's fair enough that he might feel a little overshadowed. What we have to remember is that Stuart Broad, if you define best by number of Test wickets, in terms of pace bowlers, he is the fourth best ever. In terms of overall bowlers, he is the seventh best ever. No, eighth best? No, seventh. He's three behind Jimmy. Seventh best ever.
Yeah.
And also 3 years younger than Jimmy and only three behind him. He could, I think he will overtake, I think Courtney Walsh is on something like 519?
500 and, let me just get it back up. 519, yeah. 519.
Yeah. So he will, I reckon, well, probably, if he carries on for 3 more years, he'll overtake Courtney Walsh. And what's Glenn McGrath on?
563.
I think he could get there. He very well could get to 600. We simply don't know. But I think it's very possible that he gets level with or overtakes Glenn McGrath. And then what we have to remember is how lucky are we as England fans that for the last, 10, 15 years, the 2 single greatest pace bowlers of all time have both played for us at the same time.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
Something you only get on fantasy teams. It's unbelievable. So
that's very lucky. If you look back in 10 years' time, or 20 years' time, and you're making your all-time best England 11, your pace bowlers, your bowling lineup will include both Jimmy and Stuart. And
I think that's something we can do as a segment. I would be up for that.
Yeah.
We'll do that in the next pod. We'll argue about who the greatest England Test 11 is. But it's unbelievable that we've got.
It's absolutely amazing, and I think he's obviously he didn't need to. As I said this yesterday as well, he didn't need to answer the questions that were asked of him, but they were asked, and obviously he was in that first test, and whether that was due to that because they wanted him to be rested, or they wanted to play Jimmy instead, and rest Jimmy and play Stuart for the next test. The thing is, he will have taken it and he did take it as a slight, or take it as sort of a vote of no confidence in him, and it meant that he sort of built up the mentality that there's been serious questions asked of me here. I'm being doubted for what I can do. So let me show what I can do and answer these questions. And really, I don't think the England management were asking questions of him because they always intended to play him. But I think the media definitely started asking questions of him, and he answered them. He answered them, and it shows that obviously had he didn't interview Sky Sports, he spoke out to him, he made his discontent known. Had he then not performed that he should have done in that second test, and not performed in this test as well, then probably the people would have said, well, he shouldn't have gone out and said anything in his interviews. But because he's managed to answer those questions and back up what he said with that performance, he's suddenly now, suddenly it's like, well, he should have been in from the first test. And really, obviously, hindsight would be good there. And if the England coaches had the power of hindsight, they'd probably put him in the first as well. But he's really answered the questions, I think. Really has, emphatically.
Yeah, you can get away with saying a lot more when you back it up like he does. And I as Joffer Archer said the other day, sport, and particularly this sport, is very fickle, and the way in which people I want to say including us, but maybe not so much us. I think we've been all right on this, but the way a lot of people have really pivoted from, oh well, he's not the future and stuff, to, oh well, he should have been in, and we should never have left him out. He can never be left out, and that feels a bit, it's not great. I think it's a balance, and the England management tried to strike that balance, and actually I don't think they did it badly. I think 3 back-to-back Test matches for a 34-year-old, probably not, especially when you've got another 3-match Test series in 3 weeks. I think it was right. I think it was right to give him a rest, or at least give one of them a rest, whether it should have been Anderson or Broad, up to you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think that's going to be
that young.
We've said that that one of them at some point, or both of them, will be rested for games at some point, in the future. And there will be those discussions had about, we don't want you to play this game, because we want you to rest you, get our next generations through. But you can play, you played these games of the series, I'm going to rest you for these games. Do you think that the future of this partnership now, because they've, by and large, for the last sort of 15 years of England cricket, they've been, the last sort of 12 or 13 years of England cricket, they've been selected for almost every test. Do you think that the future now is going to be ongoing discussions and ongoing over injuries, Jimmy, Stuart, do we, who do we rest when? What do we say to them to rest them and keep them on side? Do you think that that's the future of this pace attack and this partnership?
I think it has to be. We talked about this in the first pod, and it kind of has to be. Yes, they're definitely not done playing together, but I think it would be short-sighted to play them together with the new ball every match. You can't do that anymore, partly for their well-being. As we say, they're both in their mid to late 30s. They can still definitely go, but the body might give out. You don't know. Guys a lot younger than them in this series are really struggling and getting hurt because they've been overplayed. Jimmy and Broad have a pretty good injury record, but actually the West Indies haven't been keeping England out in the field for extremely long periods of time, and they're not having to bowl, like we saw in New Zealand when Jofra bowled 42 overs. They're not having to bowl, 30 overs each. They're kind of getting 20, 23 max. And so, and that's on a bad day. So they're not getting that kind of wear and tear on them, which is a really good thing. But I think, you just have to talk to them and kind of give them a bit of a say in it, not too much say, because obviously there have been things about them having too much control before, and also, if you're going to say, oh, we've got to rest one of you for this game, who's it going to be? Neither one's going to put up their hand and say, oh yes, me please, give me a rest. Neither of them is going to want to miss a game. So you just have to get that balance right, and keep them informed of the decisions, and keep them in the conversation, but make it very clear to them that while they will still play together, there will be more and more occasions where one of them plays and the other one doesn't. And I think the main thing that's come out of this series is not making that assumption that just because Broad's kind of the second one in the partnership to the greatest fast bowler of all time, that he's the one who should automatically be left out. I think that's what this fixed.
It's I mean, in a sense, all the sort of rancor that was around in the first test, or the discontent that was seen from Stuart Broad in that first test when he was left out, it's probably actually in the long term, or it'll, going ahead from the series, it will answer some questions, and it will actually do some good, because it will show the selectors and the management, even they probably didn't need this reminder, but it's a reminder that you have to value both. You can't. There's going to be no easy fix to this, or no easy way to go forward and drop Stuart. It's not going to be a case of drop Stuart and Jimmy. Do you think that it's possible to see them in the Ashes? I think so.
I think pretty much yes, and we'll talk about our Ashes teams in a minute, and I
Yeah.
imagine we both have at least one of them in there. But I think it's very possible, more so Stuart Broad. He'll be 36 going on 37, which is just a touch below where Anderson is now when we get to those Ashes.
Yeah.
Anderson will be a couple of months off 40.
Yeah.
And if he can still go, then, and I'm sure he probably will be able to, but that's great. But I think he's probably the one who, we've had all this talk about Stuart Broad being the one who kind of is automatically left out, but Anderson's the one who I think in the selectors' minds and in the coaches' minds and in the fan base's minds, that people are starting to think, well, you know, we thought this a few years ago and so on, and he carried on, but the career is probably winding down now. It's definitely in the back end.
I mean, and he can't play forever anyway. You know,
no, he simply can't. He's for a fast bowler. The number of matches he's played is phenomenal, and he's really carried on for a long time. But I think at some point something kind of has to give, and not that he'll get terribly hurt, but things will just start to wind down for him.
Yeah.
But I think it's possible to see them playing in the Ashes, but I don't think it's. I don't know possible, but I don't think it's the best idea to have them playing together as the new ball partnership in most of those Ashes tests.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you agree?
I agree there. I think that they both have tremendous value to the team still, as we've seen. You know, they are game changers still. But yes, I agree that Stuart Broad going forward will probably be the one who is selected maybe a bit more than Jimmy, or, you know, selected in those occasions where Jimmy is rested. And the reason for that is simply because he's younger. You know, Jimmy's had an extra 4 years in his career than Stuart Broad, you know. And by the time the next Ashes series comes up, he will be almost 40. You can't play forever. So I think that, I don't know, I think it would be hard for me to accept, because that's the type of person he is. You know, he's very competitive and everything. But I think it's valuable, and it's necessary that he get rested. I think that if explained to him in a sense, you know, in terms of him, of what his age is, and looking forward and trying to get new fast bowlers through for when he retires, I think then he'll accept it. But it's not going to be an easy thing, and this debate, I think, will be one that England have to tread lightly around for the future.
It's also the fact that not only is Anderson, he's kind of aging and so on, but he's also still extremely fit. He can still run in for how many overs. His pace, actually, since this he had a few injury problems, and people started to think, oh, is it starting to catch up with him? He had a really weird injury where he tore an intercostal muscle off his rib, I believe. It was really horrible. And he's come back from that after this coronavirus break and stuff with about 6 months of rehab. And he looks as good as he ever has in terms of fitness and his pace. His pace is actually up a little bit compared to what it was a few months ago and kind of last year. He's consistently around 84, 85.
And the other thing is that he's had that. I mean, that last summer and the few months before that, he was playing with injury. He had the injury. I think it was in his leg. You know, one of the muscles there, and it was his calf muscle. That was it. Yeah, it was his calf muscle. And
or his Achilles, maybe.
Yeah, he played the first test, tore it again. And this was after quite an extended break he'd had anyway, because he hadn't played any county cricket in months as well to rest it. He tore it again at that first test, you know, played it again. And people thought then, seeing him, not just that he'd had an injury, because all fast bowlers especially get injuries, but it was the fact that it was the injury he had 4 months before, and he'd had 4 months of rest, but he still hadn't got better. So people thought, well, is his body at the stage now where it's not going to heal as well as it used to, and this is it now for him as a consistent best player. But then he proved them wrong, because obviously he didn't play much in that Ashes series, but he came back and he proved them wrong.
Yeah, but now we're talking about the Ashes. We've played a little game, and we've tried to predict
Yes.
England's 11 and sort of reserve group for, let's say, the first test of the 2021 Ashes in Australia. Would you like to go first, or shall I?
I'll go. Yeah, I'll go first.
Mhm.
So my list has at the moment my list is like this: Burns, Sibley, Rory, Pope, Butler, and that was it. I didn't know what to think after
Wait,
that.
wait, sorry. I think you broke up a little bit there.
Oh,
Could you
okay.
repeat that for me?
Yeah. Burns, Sibley, Crawley, Root, Stokes, Pope, and Butler, and that's where I got to. And then I thought, well, what
Okay.
happens after that?
You didn't want to get into any of the controversial stuff.
No,
Um,
yeah, no.
I actually have a full team, so I can read that out for you. I've agreed with you exactly on the top seven: Burns, Sibley, Crawley, Root, Stokes, Pope, Butler.
Even just
I
Butler.
then went, yeah, I picked
That's
Joss Butler.
surprising.
I and this is not necessarily, I'm not going to say who I'd like to see, because of course I'd
Yeah,
like to see Joss Butler. I'd like to see him in good form, but it's who I think will be picked.
yeah.
And if Butler carries on the form which we can't call it form yet, but if he backs up this performance he's made in this game and finds another stretch of form.
I think the key thing for Joss Butler is not just backing up this performance, but what he needs to do is prove that these performances that come out, these flashes of brilliance, aren't just don't come up when he's under pressure, questioning us. And he can be done all the time. He can prove that he's got consistency. That even when people are asking questions about it, and even in his team, the team is supposedly secure. He can still fire on all cylinders.
So I then went into the bowlers, and
Wow.
I picked 8 Bess, Wood at 9, Archer at 10, and Broad at 11.
Okay.
That's what I went. And then my reserves were either Leach or Verdi, depending on how both of them kind of do.
Yeah.
Also, the best decision, the spinner decision, is kind of who the spinner is based largely on what happens in the subcontinent and
Yeah.
so on, and how they deal with those kind of drier, bouncier surfaces.
Yeah. Definitely.
Then Folkes is my reserve wicketkeeper. Ollie Stone is a reserve pace bowler. James Bracey is a reserve opener. I think Dan Lawrence usually plays at like 3 or 4, so he's kind of a reserve in there. And then I've got Curran and Anderson in there, but I'm kind of not sure, because Curran doesn't always do his best work overseas in places like Australia.
Yeah, he's a very typically English bowler.
Yeah, and then Anderson, of course, we don't know what his situation is going to be. So I kept Broad in over Anderson, because I thought at that point Anderson will be 39. We don't know what his fitness will be like. We don't know what his form will be like. Broad's still on a tear, and he's looking fantastic and can bowl pretty well in Australia. He has, and he likes bowling against Australia. So
I think I would agree with you there that I'd put Broad in over Anderson. Obviously, you still bring Jimmy along, and maybe he plays in a test, and maybe he plays in 2 tests or something of the series. But but definitely Broad over Anderson, just because of age, really. There's nothing else, just age, and Broad is the younger one, and also the one that looks at this point to be in that vein of form. So yeah. I would obviously Archer, yes. Wood, yes. Don Bess, yeah. I mean, I have to say that he's probably going to. I mean, well, he's looking like England's first choice spinner at the moment. Would be nice to see Amar Virdi again. It would be nice to see him. But obviously, as you said, the subcontinent tests will show us who is in the running to be England's spinner when they go to Australia.
And we're talking a lot about do we pick Bess or Virdi? People are slightly forgetting Jack Leach, and hero of Headingley, of course, but also just he's a very good bowler. I think he's the second choice at the moment, and I think he deserves to be given a go, and especially in the 5 test series in India, it would be very much worth playing him and Bess kind of alternately, or even playing two spinners. When you've got the all-round of Ben Stokes, that does again mean, who do you leave out, Broad or Anderson or Archer or whoever. But I think if you're picking a team to go to India, and if it's spinning prodigiously, then I'd probably pick Bess and Leach, and then have Broad and Archer as the pace bowlers with Stokes. Archer with the kind of flat out pace which Indian surfaces are now being helpful with, and Broad.
I mean, definitely, you definitely have to include Archer. Stuart Broad, I'd include Stuart Broad as well as that, especially as that sort of as that figure of experience as well in the bowling lineup. He knows what he's doing.
What you can do as well is it depends what you're looking to do, and obviously they've only done it now because of Ben Stokes. But I think maybe if after the third test you've won the series, or after the fourth test you've won the series, it might be worth leaving out Crawley or Pope and shifting everyone up the order and just playing with an extra bowler. Have Archer, Broad, Anderson, Stokes as your pace core, and then Leach and Bess, Butler at 6, Bess at 7 with a sort of all-round role, and the spinner. You get two spinners in there, and it just means that your batting lineup's a bit shorter. But if the batting's going well, then why not?
Yeah, you could, and this is something that England have shown that they can. They're very prepared to switch the balance of their team if needed. They did it in this. Obviously, this time it was there was a real necessity to what happened. But even if Stokes is fit, or even if that specific scenario that's supposed to fit the role in this game, but even if when we're in India, we win the third test. We've won the series 3-0, and then there's 2 more tests left, and we think, well, our batting lineup have done some good work. We've seen. We sort of solid on who has performed the best here. We sort of have a bit more information to go forward, especially for Australia. So let's bring our spinners on, and let's bring an extra spinner on or an extra pace bowler on, and just try and solve those dilemmas and sort of put those dilemmas to bed with who should bowl over who, and who would be best, especially because Indian surfaces are looking a lot more like Australian surfaces now. There's a lot more sort of pace in them, as you said, and it is some pitches, especially at the start of games, it is a bit like being in Australia. So it's a good test run.
I've really liked, actually. I know it's injury enforced, but I like the balance of this England side at the moment. I wouldn't say it's something you adopt as your kind of standard, but it's a very nice option. If the batting lineup is firing, if you're getting good runs on the board, then you've got Burns and Sibley being solid at the top, hopefully, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Then you've got your star players in Root and Stokes. You've got your seemingly future star player in Pope, who you could obviously swap out for Crawley, another future star. Then you've got your wicket keeper, and then it gives you just that extra bowler, and it would actually be very nice. Because obviously with this pool of bowling talent we've got, England are shifting towards, not like the West Indies, a team that's reliant on their bowlers, but a bowling-centric team who will put on, hopefully on a good day, 350, 400, or 300, 350, and then bowl the other team out cheaply.
I don't think it's just England that have moved towards this style. I think by and large the way that Test cricket is moving, and the way that cricket in general is moving, is after a big period of it being very sort of favourable to batsmen, it's now moving back in the direction of bowlers. And back to what it used to be like in the 70s and 80s, where bowlers were where it was really good hunting ground for bowlers, and it was the odds were stacked against batsmen. And I think that actually that's not a bad thing. So you look at Australia. They've done the same. They've got a really good batting lineup. Their top order is great. You've got your Warner, Munus, and Steve Smith will come on. That's some serious batting there. the same time, you've also got Nathan Lyon, you got Mitchell Stark, you got Josh Haderwood, Pat Cummins. You got some amazing bowlers, and so I think most teams across the world are moving towards being bowler centric, or being or favouring their bowlers, and then having a batting lineup that supports the bowlers.
I don't think that's true with Australia, actually, in the sense that they actually would rather drop a bowler than a batsman, and they've shown themselves to prefer that. Hang on, I think you've frozen a bit.
Oh yeah, you've frozen on mine. 1 sec.
What did it? Pav may have frozen.
Okay.
Hello, dear listeners. We had some technical issues. We've had to start. We've had to pause our recording and start again. So where was I? I was talking about the balance of the side in Australia. I think Australia have shown themselves more willing to drop a bowler than a batsman.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of the traditional way of things. But actually, I'd like to see Australia, with the world-class batting lineup they have, and if they're in form, maybe drop someone like a Travis Head or someone like that, and instead say, okay, well, we've got David Warner at the top of the order. We've got Steve Smith, Marnus Labuschagne, who can all bat for days. We've got Usman Khawaja. We've got Tim Payne, all of whom are very good batsmen. And then we're going to line you up against not 5, but 6 bowlers. So you're going to have to deal with Patterson, Cummins, Hazelwood, Stark, Lyon, and who's the other one? No, they did.
That's their pace line.
That's them, but they messed up the balance of their side in the last Ashes, and they didn't. They won, but they went with only 4 bowlers, didn't they? 3 pace. Yeah, that's odd. So actually, that shows them more to be batting centric. I'd like to see them to reset their batting lineup to 1 fewer batsman, and kind of have the more traditional balance of the side with those 4 pacemen in and your spinner. So that would be nice. But as we were saying about England, I think this is a nice option for them to have if the batting lineup is in form. If they're making runs, you can just say, well, we're going to sacrifice an extra 20 or 30 runs. And then what we'll do is we'll throw 6 bowlers at you. So you've got to deal with Stokes, who is a fantastic all-rounder bowler. Then our main pace lot of Archer, Wood, Broad, Anderson, Curran and Wokes fit in there in England, and a spinner. Yeah, and so we're always going to have fresh legs. We're always going to have a fresh bowler. We're always going to bowl you out. We're going to take 20 wickets, and that's been a big focus for England, is not just getting the runs on the board, because they haven't always done that, but they know they have the ability to do that. It's taking 20 wickets and winning matches, and this is a balance of the side which does that.
Bowlers win you series, to be honest. And because if you can get a side out cheaply, it reduces the pressure on your batting lineup so much. But also saying that, the opposite is true, that if your batting lineup maybe hasn't performed or has had a day off and been got out cheaply, if you have the bowling attack that can defend even a low total and make it competitive still, then you'll be okay, or you won't be okay, but you've got a lot less to worry about, because you have that batting lineup who is almost like a second line of defence, really. And
getting runs only gets you so far. 500 runs can win you in the game in the sense that it gives your bowling lineup time to win the game and the ability to give away a few runs to win the game. But the 500 runs on their own aren't going to win that game. You have to take 20 wickets. If you get 500 runs and don't take 20 wickets, you draw. Yeah. So that's kind of the best case scenario if you've got a poor bowling attack. So as 2 people who possibly favour bowling can say, bowlers are possibly more important. They are the ones that win matches in the sense that they get the other team out, which is the thing that wins the match, not just draws.
They're definitely becoming more important in today's sort of climate again. Especially so within the game today, there's been a resurgence of bowlers which as I said, was lost, for the last 10, 15 years. But it's coming back now. It's coming back, and that's only a good thing. That's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Right. So Burns and Sibley made the first England century stand since opening century stand since 2016, I think. So it was quite significant. The question is, has the debate over England's opening two batsmen been settled?
At the moment, I think yes. I think they've done exceptionally well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing really well. There's not a lot more to say about it than that. They're breaking all these kind of dry spells that have been around since Cook, or if you're not called Alistair Cook, since Andrew Stroud in 2012. Yeah. They're coming up with big scores, pretty much, a score of about 50.
Yeah.
Basically, at least once a game. They're usually getting, I don't know if it's usually now, I don't know if it's over 50% of the time, but a lot of the time, far more regularly, they're getting to 50 with no loss.
Yeah.
Which has been England's problem for ages.
Oh yeah, it really has.
And it's just, they're looking good. Burns, his early career average has hampered him a little bit, but he's played 17 test matches and is averaging 33.
Yeah.
I think in the last year, he's probably averaging higher than that.
Yeah.
Sibley's played 8 matches and is averaging 44.
Yeah.
One of the first of all, he's, other than Joe Root, I think he's the only person in the England team, possibly with the exception of Stokes now, with a career average over 40.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think Stokes still has a little bit to do to get to career average of over 40. But if he carries on in the vein that he has been, because in the last year his average has been 62, if he carries on as he has been, his average will go right up.
Obviously, it's early days for Sibley, but him and Joe Root are kind of the two with the career average over 40 at the moment. Obviously, a much shorter career for Sibley, but he's playing really well. He's one of the few people who currently his test average is above his first class average, which is really nice to see. It means he's settling in at least to test cricket. He's really trying to push on, make some runs, and if you look at his entire career, he scores a lot of runs at every level. Burns is a fantastic batsman, and I think this is basically settled the debate in that you can't see either of these guys being dropped bar a kind of significant loss of form for several games.
Definitely.
If Sibley comes in and gets 4 ducks in a series, then people might start to look at his position. But other than something like that, it seems unlikely that anyone else will replace them.
Well, that's why they've been in both of our Ashes teams. Obviously, that's we've got a year to think about that and a year to see what happens. But I think that the questions have been put to bed now, and I think for the first time in a while, England have a stable opening too. And it's an opening partnership that if the conditions or if the sort of circumstances allow, it can be switched up a bit. So we've got the strength in depth that say when we go to the subcontinent, and I mean both of them we haven't really had a proper examination against spin yet. So when we go to the subcontinent, and they maybe one of them don't perform on the pitches that are there. And maybe that's just a weakness in their game. We've got players like Keaton Jennings who does really well in the subcontinent on all those pitches against spin, and so we can mix it up if we need to. But we've got the foundation of that team, and the foundation of that partnership is there. And I think that they're going to play, if they carry on like they do it, they're going to play a lot more for England together.
I'd be cautious to just take hit the nuclear Keaton Jennings button, and that really is the nuclear button when it comes to test opening. I don't think that if they start kind of having trouble in the subcontinent that we should go, oh, Keaton Jennings does well here, he averages well here, stick him in the team. I think you've got to say to them, both of them have not had sort of extensive trouble in terms of getting out to spin, other than Burns to Roston Chase, specifically, who doesn't really spin it, although he's getting horrendous tweak out of this surface, but I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But they get a bit bogged down in their scoring rate against spin, and I think it's a great opportunity for them to go out, send them out there against some of the premier spinners in the world in spin-friendly conditions, and go score. Go ahead. You know, your job is to score. We don't mind if you get out we don't too much mind if you get out for 30 or 40, but your job is not to get bogged down. You know, crack out a sweep shot now and again, learn how to manipulate the field against spin, learn how to pick up the length and work on it. And that's what they're doing. They're at the moment, they both recognise they have trouble scoring against spin, and they've both been in the nets for hours on end, getting Graham Thorpe to chuck them spinners and just play them better.
The other thing to mention is that they are both very young players yet, and so they will
young in their Test career, obviously. Burns 29.
But they're young in their Test career, and even though Burns is 29, as I said at the start, he has that sort of appetite to learn, to increase his skill set and improve his skill set. So I think that, you know, they will both soak up whatever is thrown at them. You know, they will both soak up everything that's taught to them, and you know, use it to improve their game. So I think we're looking at a very stable partnership here.
And they're lucky as two players who don't struggle getting out but struggle scoring against spin. In the batting coach who they're working with is one of the better players of spin we've had as an England team, and he will obviously have some very, very valuable advice for them. I'm sure as well they have access to people like Alistair Cook, who was an excellent player of spin and also learned on the job. Until he went to the subcontinent, he really only had that one shot against spin, and then he had to learn how to get comfortable sweeping in the subcontinent. And after that,
in India.
And after that, he became prodigious against spin. So he will, I have no doubt, be available to them after coronavirus and so on. And I think it'll definitely, failing that, they can always bid for the top prize in the Ruth Strauss Foundation charity auction, which is a day with the Knights of Cricket, i.e. Sir Alistair Cook, Sir Andrew Strauss and Sir Ian Botham, and apparently includes a batting masterclass with Sir Cook. So they could just bid for that and get some training. But no, I think they'll definitely have the opportunity to improve significantly, and they will, and they have shown willingness to learn and get better. And Sibley, particularly, with so much time ahead of him, I think, I'm not going to say, this early on, he has the potential to be another Strauss or Cook, but I think he has the potential to be an extremely good, dependable, run-scoring English opener.
He has promise. I think the best way to put it is he has promise at this point. And whether that promise...
I think it's in him to score a couple thousand runs.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, I hope that they carry on. And obviously, it'll be how they're managed as well by England, by their counties. But we've seen that prove in the last 10 years usually. I think that they should be okay with that. And if there are, because especially for a Test opener, there's always going to be barren periods. There's always going to be periods where you're not scoring as many runs. It's just a dip in form. But they just have to be reminded that if those happen, they have to be reminded that they're temporary. You'll get back to the form. You'll find it again. You just have to keep plugging away, and eventually it will come back. So as long as there's not too much pressure put on them.
I'm just looking at Sibley's, career stats, test-wise. He, in 8 Test matches, which, it's not that many, he scored 532 runs, an average of 44, and he's made 2 big hundreds, and I think it was 120 something, 133, and he's made a 50. Yeah. So obviously he's made 50s to get to those hundreds, but also that's a fantastic conversion rate so far in his career. if he's in enough to get 50, he can crack on and get 100. So
it's really promising for England that you
very good.
got an opening batsman that he reaches 50, you're sort of more than likely that he will then go on to 100, and he just and what it means is it's also then for opposition bowlers and for opposition teams, it's that sort of it adds the factor to them that if they're trying to rush to try and get him out early because they know that if he reaches 50, then he's going to stay there for a while.
Yeah.
And so that it's inevitably a good thing that he has a higher conversion rate. Right. I was just going to say, looking at the time, should we move on to the star player at the moment of the day?
Yes.
And one word to describe it.
Star player for the West Indies. Probably Jason Holder. His contribution kind of got them past the follow on. He's leading from the front, and in this, what is pretty certainly kiss of death, going to be a losing effort. He's showing some fortitude. He injured his thumb yesterday. We didn't talk about Shane Dowritt. Special mention to him getting blocked in the face. Oh, it looked terrible, it looked very painful. Poor bloke. Now, interestingly, Joshua Da Silva, sub-wicket keeper on, just taking his first test catch.
So they said that they had a look at sort of the rules and the regulations, and obviously Joshua Da Silva has been talked about as a very promising batsman in a young one. They've said that because he's not a concussion replacement or a COVID replacement, he can't come in as a batsman, but he can be a wicket. He's a wicket-keeping substitute.
A sub-fielder is allowed to keep with the umpire's permission, and they gave it. So, but he's not allowed to bat, as far as I'm aware. Star player for England. Well, who could it be? Stuart Broad.
I think, is that the first time in our podcast that our star player we've had the same star player 2 days in a row? Or was it Stokesy last week?
Possibly. I don't know.
Let's see if you can do the hat-trick.
Of the moment of the day?
If we can do 3 days in a row,
maybe. But yeah, Stuart Broad, fantastic with the bat, with the ball, great bowling, cracking bowling, unbelievable. Came in with the old ball and cleaned up the middle and the tail. Came in with the new ball and got the West Indies off to the worst possible start they could have. Two absolute peaches of a ball. Of two balls. He's fantastic, and he well deserves his 500 wickets. I can't wait to see him get it. And also, if he gets 2 more wickets in this game, which is likely, that will be his, I believe, career's second 10-wicket match. Which can't think of a finer way to do it, really, can you? So, fantastic. He was unbelievable, and he's the real man of the day. And probably man of the match if England go on to win, which they should. Moment of the day. I think late in the day, Stuart Broad's wicket of John Campbell. It was just such a perfect ball. So nothing you could do about it. Stuart Broad loves bowling to left-handers. And there was simply nothing John Campbell could do. He had to play at the ball. He had to play that line of the ball, and then it just seamed away and caught the edge.
It was one of those
catchable height at Joe. It was about there. It was the perfect, the best ball you can bowl as a pace bowler. Purest dismissal in cricket. So it was, I'm talking about it with kind of near religious reverence here, but it was perfection from a bowling point of view.
There's the word unplayable is used a lot. It's probably used too much now, but that was genuinely an unplayable.
No one, not Steve Smith, no one could play that ball. Word to describe the day, Stuart. Second word to describe the day, Broad. That's all I'm going to say.
Brilliant stuff. So I would say my star player for the West Indies, Jason Holder as well. It's tough situation to be in, especially given how strong they are test. You know, and the flashes on the strong in the second one as well. You know, sort of escaping the draw here, and then England managed to pull that back. And it's just, you know what it is? It's exhaustion more than anything, because just come and just it's just body slammed them really, and left them gasping. And it's kind of simple because there's not really a way they can win the game. England looking like win, and they do obviously. Then they don't take the trophy. England regain the trophy, and the West Indies don't have that first series win for 33 years. It's just sad. It's going to be really bitter for them, but they have to take heart from the first Test performance that they had. So yeah, James Holder is my birthday. England has to be Stuart Broad. Can't be anyone else. So Stuart Broad for England. Moment of the day, mine would be not just the wicket of John Campbell, but both of Stuart Broad's wickets at the end of the day. So to leave them 10 for 2, because there's a possibility that the West Indies again, you know, maybe bat out what happened in day 4. You know, the limited amount of overs that are going to be available in day 4, and then you bat out day 5 as well. And it's a tall order, but it's still possible, and they can escape with a draw. That's not looking very good now. You know, it's changed the game. He's a master producing in his game, and he produced so many in this. He produced so many in this series, always Test match, particularly. There's so many game-changing moments. But those 2 wickets, that spell at the end of the day, it was brilliant, and it really set England up for what they need to do. Because having to take 8 wickets in a day compared to 10 wickets in a day is a big difference, especially if those wickets don't include yours. You know? So yeah, that's how the day. You said the 2 words I was going to say. I said promising yesterday. Spectacular. There you go. Yeah, it was spectacular from Stuart Broad. Yeah, really good.
Now that we record these in the morning as well, I can bring our viewers/listeners a quick update about the day ahead. I've just looked at the BBC live text commentary. It is hammering down in Manchester.
Yeah.
They said not so much cats and dogs as tigers and wolves. It is absolutely leathering it down. So it looks very possible that today will be a washout, predictably, leading to final day showdown again. Apparently there's no chance of play this morning, possibly a few overs in the early afternoon. But brace yourselves for a washout, and sadly brace yourselves for then no podcast, because if we have nothing to talk about, we can't waste time with it. So yeah.
No, definitely. But if we don't see you tomorrow for day 4, then we will see you on Wednesday for day 5. We'll see you then for our coverage of day 5, and by that point we will have a conclusion to not just this Test match, but a conclusion to the championship, to the series, and we'll be able to know who's won, who's taking the trophy back with them. And also we'll be able to give our views on not just that match, the whole series, and give our players of the series, and look ahead to the next series. So look forward to that if we don't see you tomorrow. But thanks for listening. It's been great doing this.
It's sunny here in London, so I'm off for a net.
It's really sunny here as well.
I'm off to the net.
Very nice. But yes, we will see you either tomorrow or Wednesday. Thank you.